Alright folks, how are we doing? It's Shabash and welcome back to the channel. It's Orna again. We're bringing you the final main class archetype progression guide today. It's an all-in-one pet class progression guide starting off at tier 7 when we can unlock the Beastmaster spec. I'll explain how you can unleash the full potential of your chosen pet. I'm also going to cover itemization in this same video. It's fairly simple in that we can wear both warrior and mage gear all the way up to tier 10, where we can then wear anything that we can find. Our main focus is survival anyway, allowing our pet to deal all the damage. So let's light a fire under this and get started with a wee explanation into pet power and action rate. So first things first, let's have a look at how you can actually check your pet's power, and we'll give you a quick explanation into how pets increase their power and how the individual pet classes and specs actually affect your pet. So firstly, to check your pet power, you go into your menu and go to your status, then your follower tab here. This will show your currently equipped pet stats. And the first thing to note is that your pet power actually increases with your character level. So we can see on this tier 7 warhorse pet, I've got an attack of 1638 and magic is 245. Now this is on a level 250 character. If I swap to my alt for a second, you can see I'm level 212 and I've got the same pet equipped, but this time the attack is 1400 and the magic is 217. So your character level immediately impacts your pet power. Now the next source of power increase are obviously going to come from your class and your specification. That's the whole point of this video. So the actual pet classes will have a Valhallan passive. We can see the tier 10 Beowulf has Valhallan Dissonance, the tier 9 Bahamut has Valhallan Strength 2, tier 8 Freyr has Valhallan Strength, and the tier 7 Dragon Knight has Valhallan Way. But the real power of pure pet builds come from having both a Valhallan passive and a pet specification, because what actually happens is that the Valhallan passive gets multiplied from your class, then you have the Beastmaster or Tamer spec gets multiplied onto the pet power, but then if you have both a Valhallan passive and in either Beastmaster or Tamer spec, they get added together. So the power basically doubles. It's pretty insane. So I'll just show you here, I've switched to Dragon Knight and you can see our follower is now 1% stronger compared to the Gilgamesh Inquisitor we had before. I've now gone Magistrate Beastmaster, so we don't have a Valhallan passive from our class, but we have the Beastmaster spec, and the Beastmaster spec on its own has increased our pet's power by 10%. Now let's go Dragon Knight Beastmaster. This is the outcome of the Valhallan Way passive added to the Beastmaster specification passive. So your total pet power is more than doubled, and this is only from the first pet class build that we come across really in the game. So if you're considering going down the pet build line, just bear in mind that if you're going to be purely pet focused, you really need to have both a Valhallan Way passive from a class and also either the Beastmaster or Tamer spec to really maximize your pet's potential. Okay, now let's talk about pet action rate. You can see this below your pet stats, and these will change depending on which skills your pet actually knows and can perform. In total, there's actually 6 different action rate categories. These are attack, heal, buff, debuff, spell, and protect. On this particular warhorse pet, we can only see 2 different categories, which is buff. This is happening from the speed skill, which buffs our dexterity. And then we have the spell chance, which applies to trample and onslaught. You'll notice there's not actually an attack chance applying to the attack, which is effectively like the pet's version of the attack button, because without any action rate buffs from either our class, specification or items, this warhorse actually can't perform an attack. However, action rate buffs do actually apply to the attack, you just can't see it in the game, and any increase to action rate applies to every single category on your pet, you just can't really see it. So actually our warhorse now has an invisible chance to perform the attack. Any increases to action rate are applied additively, so we get 2% from being Dragon Knight with the Valhallan Way passive, we get 5% from being the Beastmaster spec, so we actually have a hidden 7% attack chance. Now remember, action rate applies to each skill individually, and as warhorse we have 2 spells, remember? Now it's not 14% chance to cast a spell, it's 14% chance to cast trample, and it's a 14% chance to cast onslaught. So to get the true action rate chance for your warhorse to cast a spell, you actually need to do a little bit of probability maths, but we'll come onto a really amazing spreadsheet written by Ulyssessword, which is super easy to use. You just plug in your class, your spec, your level, and the probability for each skill is affected by your current status in battle. For example, if you already have dexterity up from speed, the warhorse is not going to cast the speed skill again because we already have the buff. So it does take that into account. Another example is if you have a pet that can heal you, like the Twilight Wisp, it's not going to use Wisp's heal when you have 100% health. To really dig into the mathematics behind pet power and action rate, I'm going to link in the description to this Orna Pet Stats spreadsheet written by Ulyssessword, I believe. Amazing work by him. Basically, he's gone through each pet in the game, collected all the stats, built up this spreadsheet so you can go in, change your class, change your spec. You can even compare pets. You go in the simple calc sheet. You can then change which pet you want and even compare up to 3 pets at a time. This is all done automatically, referring to the database he's made. You'll see the pet power, then you've got the individual action rates for each category: healing, buffing, debuffing, spell, and attack. And then it pumps out an adjusted no action rate. Take this away from 100 to give you the actual action rate. So for example, this is a 56.3% chance for nothing to happen. Just take this away from 100. So to really dig into detail on different pets, compare different pets, use this, go and play about with this sheet. Basically you just change what's in the yellow cell, so you can plug in your level, plug in your class, spec. If you've got any Fey Chimera gear or Fey Dragon gear, that affects your pet power and action rate respectively. Then you can go in and compare pets. It goes into a super amount of detail that we're not really going to cover in this video, but it's there for you to use if you want it. Again, big props to Ulyssessword for creating this a really amazing public resource. Okay, so we can start going a pure pet build at tier 7 when we get access to the Beastmaster spec. As I just mentioned, the bonuses get added to your class spec passive. So really the first pet class is going to be the Dragon Knight at tier 7. It does require Blade Master or Battle Mage to go directly into Dragon Knight, and it can wear both Warrior and Mage gear. So the transition into this class shouldn't be too bad depending on what you were playing previously. I'd say the one advantage of going Blade Master previously is you get access to the Swordplay skill, which gives you the temporary buffs, and remember those buffs also apply to your pet. So as well as you doing a little bit of damage to supplement your pet, you also get the temporary buffs applying to both you and your pet. But remember, as we're playing a pure pet build, we really want to focus on our pet doing as much of the damage as possible. In fact, pretty much all the damage. And any damage that we can do is more of a supplementary type. We're concentrating on buffing our pet, staying alive, and acting like a shield for our pet in the back. That is the typical playstyle of pet builds. With that said, the Dragon Knight's Valhallan Way passive is the weakest of the Valhallan passives. It only increases our pet power by 1% and pet action rate by 2%, so it's useless on its own, but getting added to the Beastmaster spec is really when we unlock our pet's huge potential at this tier. The recharge ability is super important for us. It's going to allow us to use the Lunge skill, which has a 50% chance to crit. Perfect for doing dungeons, even in PvP. Once we've buffed up, we can just sit there, keep restoring our health and mana with Lunge, let your pet do all the damage from the back. The Dragon Slayer passive, this is our charged passive, which increases our own character stats upon slaying dragons over the previous 36 hours. This doesn't affect our pet in any way. Looking at the skills we learn as Dragon Knights, we have the jump skill, which is not going to be very important. It's really outclassed by Lunge because we do have the recharge passive. And then depending if you found a decent warrior weapon or mage weapon, you can use Multi-Flare or Blight Strike 2 to apply dragon damage. These are fairly expensive mana-wise. We then have Wyvern Speed 2, which is really expensive, but it has the chance to give you single up for your dexterity, magic, and attack. So really solid skill, really good buff skill. On that note, I should mention, if you haven't done so already, you really want to go back and pick up a couple of classes. That is the Adept class and the Druid class. So you have the tier 4 Adept class to pick up Barrier 2, giving you single up defense and resistance immediately. And then even more importantly is the tier 5 Druid class, where we can get double up for both our attack and magic via Mimic's Mischief. We can counter getting cursed by just wearing an Anku's ring. You also have Golem's Fortitude, giving you double up defense and resistance. And then if you want to individually double up your attack or magic with either Bear's Might or Jin's Talent, you have the option to do so. We also get Wisp's Heal, which is going to be very important to get rid of status effects like Rot, Paralysis, which we can do so while our pet goes out and dishes damage. The only status affliction affecting your pet is Blind, which is one of the things that can be cured by using a Cure All. So for pets at tier 7, I'd say there's two main options that we're going to go for. First one that we've used in this video up to now is the Warhorse. You can see it's got a legendary background, so it is fairly rare. It might take you a few beastries to find one, but Warhorse is going to be fantastic for raiding, more so than any other pet at this tier. Okay, we're not too worried about the speed giving us dexterity up. We can also get that from Wyvern Speed, but both Trample and Onslaught are multi-hit skills, which are going to dish out a lot of damage. Onslaught also has the chance to decrease your opponent's defense by double down permanently, thus increasing the power of both of these multi-hit skills by a lot. You can see the spell chance isn't huge, it's only 14%, and we do have the 7% attack rate. Let's swap over to the Orna Pet Stats. We put in level 150 for entering tier 7, Dragon Knight Beastmaster. Got the Warhorse here, and of course we don't have a healing skill. We do have the buffing skill, which is speed, but remember, once we have dexterity up, this will never happen again. Interestingly, we get a debuff action rate increase. This applies to the Onslaught skill because it can actually debuff your opponent's stats, I'm fairly sure. So this 7% chance actually gets added to using Onslaught. Then we have the 14% chance for each spell, Onslaught and Trample, and we have a 7% attack chance as well. So I just made a copy of this spreadsheet by going to File, make a copy so I can now play about with the spreadsheet more easily. So you can see what I've done. I've basically made the buff chance for Warhorse 0 to replicate having already casted the speed skill, already having the dexterity up, and that's giving us a 64% no action rate chance in the end. So our actual action rate is going to be roughly 36% chance for our Warhorse to do something per turn, which isn't a lot, but when it does do something, it's going to hurt a lot. Next pet we're going to talk about at tier 7 is the Dark Dragon. Now you can see it doesn't have any rarity background, which means it's a common pet and it's going to be super easy to find. Costs you 350,000 orns, which is another thing I haven't mentioned yet. The one downside to the pet build is that on top of buying your class and your spec, you also need to buy your pet. So you got to get good at that orn grind. Anyway, the benefit of Dark Dragon is that it has a lot of spells that it can cast. It has a hybrid of attack and magic. The 2 attack skills being Dark Strike 2, and the magic spells being Shadow 2 and Nightmare. Can also cause your opponent to fall asleep with that 10% debuff chance. So you've got really high attack and magic stats. The only downside to Dark Dragon at this tier specifically is it literally only does dark damage. And the tier 7 Kingdom Raid Baylor Elite is immune to dark damage. So you can't use this for raiding Baylor Elite, you can use it for absolutely everything else. And due to the really high spell chance of 27%, let's quickly jump into the Orna Pet Stats spreadsheet, and we can see Dark Dragon, the action rate is super high, 76% chance to do something, which is pretty ridiculous. More than twice as likely to do something per turn as the Warhorse. So this is going to be your go-to for dungeons and PvP especially. Be careful if you're going up against necromancers at tier 8, they are immune to dark damage. But Dark Dragon is an absolute monster in PvP at tier 7. You can actually probably farm the arena with Dark Dragon as a Dragon Knight Beastmaster, help you pick up those orns for the Warhorse going into raids and stuff. So Dark Dragon is perfect for dishing out consistent damage at this tier. You probably want to use this for everything except raiding Baylor Elite, to be honest with you. The last pet I'll mention at this tier is the Twilight Wisp at tier 7. It's a very common pet to have for literally every class, and it's surprisingly not too bad. In a pet build, it's not going to dish out as much damage as the other 2 pets, but having that heal chance and the 2 healing spells, it can get really annoying in PvP. Especially in area defense. If you want to stop locals around you, this is even going to heal your character up in control. Okay, so at tier 8 we're going to upgrade to the Freyr class, and we're going to of course stick with the Beastmaster specialization. We now gain immunity to dragon damage, and we can still wear both warrior and mage equipment, and our increased pet strength comes from our Valhallan strength passive. This now gives a 5% multiplier to our pet stat, as well as a 3% action rate increase. We stick with the recharge passive as well, so we're still going to be using lunge as one of our main attacking skills to keep our health and mana topped up, and we remain with the Dragon Slayer passive to increase our class character stats. Skill wise, it's more of the same from Dragon Knight. You learn Jump 2, which again I don't really recommend. Wormsong is quite a nice buff. We get crit up, which is nice for certain attack builds in later game. Increased crit only applies to the attack button, remember? So this can help us regain mana if we run out and we're forced to use the attack button. Fairly expensive at 100 mana, also temporarily boosts attack and magic. I'd prefer to use something like Swordplay, or the cheaper temporary stat buffs like Ponder to give single temp magic up, or Sharpen to give temporary single attack up. We then learn Blight Strike 3 and Wyvern Strike, which are good dragon damage dealing attack skills. Flare 3, which is a fantastic magic. Flare 3 as well, which is a fantastic dragon damage magic skill, pretty underrated. And then Chimera Song, which is not as good as it sounds, to be completely honest with you. Otherwise, all these dragon skills, they're kind of more useful for a lot of other endgame classes. However, fit them in, try them out. You might find a good use for them at this point in the game. If you're doing active damage as your class, remember you're going to be doing more damage if you do your faction elemental damage rather than dragon damage. So remember, the pure pet build, we're going to be buffing up our defense, our attack, and our magic, and then ideally you want to be hiding behind ward as well, and also applying temporary buffs to either attack and magic, or both, depending on what pet we have. So let's move on to what pets are available to us at tier 8, and we're going to start off with a big spiky boy. That is the Big Cactus, a fairly recent addition to the game. This is more of a super burst damage dealing pet. You got 2 Arrowstorm skills, so if you played Hunter or Ranger specs, you'll kind of know what they're about. The damage numbers never go away, can be very exceptional for PvP situations, but it's not what you want for consistent damage. Huge burst damage with either Arrowstorm 1 or 2. We're going to hop into Orna Pet Stats here. So we're now level 175. We've just got our Freyr class. And Big Cactus, we're going to have just under 3000 attack. So including the attack chance, we're going to have a 32.7% chance for Big Cactus to do something per turn. Attack is not going to hurt too much, so let's just see what it looks like without the attack button. So you've got about a 1 in 4 chance to cast Arrowstorm per turn, so it's not a lot in comparison to something like Triton, which we'll come to in a second, but the burst damage is really insane, with both the Arrowstorm skills being massive multi-hit skills. If you've applied defense down on your opponent as well as temporary defense down, this is going to cause absolutely massive damage. Something where Omni Strike skill comes into its own here. But let's move on to the Triton pet, which is probably going to be your number one choice at tier 8. Definitely pick this up first as your new tier 8 pet. We've got a nice mix of attack and magic skills, as well as a little bit of healing chance for us. So you've got decent attack damage coming from your attack, bleed, double cut, going to be your hardest hitting skill, and guts as well, which has a chance to crit. And then we have Drain 3, which is really nice to get. Going to apply fairly consistent healing. Going to be really nice for powering through boss dungeons at this tier. Let's jump over into Orna Pet Stats. And overall, there's about a 58% chance for Triton to do something. So it's much more consistent damage than the big Cactus. Yes, it's not going to be as bursty. We only have one multi-hit skill with the double cut 2, but this is definitely going to be number one choice for dungeons. It's going to be absolutely fine for PvP, great for world farming as well. If you're really stingy and really low on orns and you only have one pet to get at tier 8, definitely go for this lobster boy. It really complements the Freyr class exceptionally well. Alright, so tier 9 is really where pet builds come into their own with the Bahamut Tamer Crimson Gazer combo. It's super overpowered at the start of tier 9, but it's so much fun to play. You will destroy everything in your path. Berserk bosses, PvP arena, Bahamut Tamer, Crimson Gazer is why a lot of people switch to play pet builds at tier 9. So let's go into the Bahamut class. Again, we're immune to dragon damage. We can still wear equipment of both warrior and mage, which is going to allow us to easily gear up and focus on 2 selections of ward gear from Pollyon. Interestingly, you can actually switch to Bahamut from Necromancer class at tier 8, which I feel like a lot of people do actually do that. Mages get to the end of tier 8 into tier 9 and they start coming across Bahamut Tamers with Crimson Gazer. They get one shot and they're like, oh shit, I want some of that. And why wouldn't you? With Valhallan Strength 2 passive getting increased over Freyja, we now have 10% increase to your pet power, as well as a 7% increase to pet action rate. Switching to the Tamer spec now gives a 20% increase to your pet power, as well as an 8% increase to pet action rate. As we spoke about earlier, the pet power multipliers get added together after being applied to your pet, and the action rates are literally added together, really turning our pets into superpowers. We remain with the recharge passive, which is going to be super nice, super important as well if we want to be doing hard mode dungeons. Very useful for normal dungeons and boss dungeons. To be completely honest with you, we're still going to be using that lunge skill, that lunge 1 skill, which you learn super early in the game. That 50% crit rate is absolutely huge for pet builds. We get Mana Siphon, which is neither here or there. It's obviously going to be nice to save a mana pot. We regain Dragon Slayer as our stat charging passive, which at tier 9 is very easy to upkeep with lots of Lizard warriors and mages. We also get Hybrid Monster, where your attack stat will slightly increase your magic, and your magic stat will slightly increase your attack. Unfortunately, Hybrid is not really worth building around in the current version of the game, and as a pure pet class, we're not worried about it anyway. It can be something useful in the background which we completely forget about, depending on what kind of weapon we're using. And then checking our skills, we learn all dragon type skills, actually Beast Strike 1, 2, and 3, which are fairly nice in that they give you ward turns after using Beast Strike 2. Total damage is, yes, based on both your attack and your magic. So the skills are kind of forcing the hybrid play, but we're just focusing on our pet damage anyway, so we're not really bothered about our hybrid stats. I have to say, Lucis Naturae is a very useful skill actually, in that it does give you 1 ward turn, and it's 90 mana. It's pretty cheap. Or you can use something like Horizontal Slash, learned from the Blade Master. That's going to upkeep your ward turns while doing a little bit of damage. Even something like Riposte is nice. And at tier 9 we can really start increasing our ward, especially with gear from Apollyon. Being able to wear both warrior and mage gear is a huge advantage here. We're not worried about just one type of drop. And hiding behind ward and upkeeping those ward turns is the real kind of playstyle of purest pet builds. So honestly, our main skills we're going to be using as Bahamut Tamer, we're going to buff up using Golem's Fortitude, Barrier 2, Mimic's Mischief, Wyvern Speed 2. Then we're going to use Ward of Mithril ideally, hide behind ward, and then you can use Fortify 3 to increase your ward turns. Swordplay is still really good, giving us those temporary buffs, and your temporary debuffs on your enemy. Pairs very nicely with the Nidhogg pet. If we're going all out Crimson Gazer, I like to use Ponder, giving you temp single magic up. But this tier is all about the pet, and there's 2 super amazing pets that we're going to get. First one is Crimson Gazer. This thing is absolutely insane. It has these unstable magic spells, which if you're trying to cast as a class, take you 3 turns in battle, but because it's a pet, it casts them immediately, using only 1 turn. So you're getting 3 turns worth of power in 1 turn. Now these skills don't have very high penetration, so if you're coming up against higher tier characters that have high resistance, then that's going to be where Bahamut Tamer struggles. But that's a purely PvP aspect. For world farming, this thing's an absolute monster. You're going to be able to one-shot literally almost everything in the game, except Mammon. at this tier. It's got a super high spell rate as well, 23% spell chance across the 4 skills. The major downside about Crimson Gazer is that it can apply the status afflictions coming from each skill onto your character, and you can never get immunity to status afflictions applied by your pet. So even if you're wearing a Ring of Anwin, which gives you immunity to the 4 basic status afflictions, Rot, Paralysis, Freeze, and Burning, Crimson Gazer uses Cataclysm 2, you still might get Rot. Same applies with Fulmination 2, you still might get paralyzed, which makes this really annoying to raid with, especially if you're going up against Apollyon, and it's at that point where you're going to switch in Nidhogg to do nice consistent damage, very easy to manage. You don't need to miss turns because you're frozen and paralyzed and you're losing health to burning. Super annoying. If you're in a rush and you want to do as much damage as possible in like 1 minute, pop in with Crimson Gazer, get a few hits in. Let's jump into Orna Pet Stats. I've put in level 200, fresh Bahamut Tamer at tier 9, and Crimson Gazer here. You see the magic stat isn't super high, so this is where the penetration of the 4 unstable skills, that's where it comes into effect. It's not super high. You can see compared to Nidhogg here, your magic is less. But because they're unstable skills, the M2, the second part of the damage equation, is super high. But it's this action rate here, 84%. It's absolutely huge. You can see each spell is actually classed as a debuff as well, because it can also apply the 4 status afflictions. So those all get counted, and it kind of acts like a second set of spells. So you've got super high action rate. It's at this point, if you're using Crimson Gazer a lot for doing dungeons, for example, and I guess raids to an extent if you're that mad, you're going to be wanting to use Wisp's Heal or Wisp's Heal 2 in all of your skill loadouts, because the Wisp's Heal will allow you to cure the 4 basic status afflictions you get from using Crimson Gazer. You just have to watch out if you're frozen or paralyzed, it might not always work. That's when Panaceas come into play. So Crimson Gazer, absolute must to have at this tier. You at least have to try it out. If you can't stand it and you want something more consistent, you can switch to Nidhogg. But then if you're coming up against another Bahamut, that dragon damage ain't going to work. The thing with Nidhogg as well here, it has the Master Forge rarity, which is the rarest class of pet in the game. So it might take you a while to actually find one in bestiaries, but it's another definite pickup at this tier. Really consistent damage output. Yes, it's all dragon type damage, so you're going to have to be able to counter that using your own class skills, either using normal elemental damage or elementalist damage, physical attack damage, whatever. You're going to have another way of dealing damage in both the world and against other Bahamuts in PvP. But for raiding Apollyon and anything lower at tier 9, Nidhogg is really solid, really nice and consistent damage. You don't need to worry about being frozen or paralyzed like you do with Crimson Gazer. Jumping into the Orna Pet Stats, you can see you've got really high attack and magic compared to Crimson Gazer. And again, another really high attack rate, 82%. So you're going to get used to how much damage your Nidhogg can do. For doing things like dungeons, it will be slower overall than Crimson Gazer, but it's going to be a much smoother experience through the dungeon. And coming up against those fallen gods at tier 9, none of them are immune to dragon damage, whereas Crimson Gazer likes to use Fulmination against Fallen Thor and repeat that for each individual element and faction god respectively. But Crimson Gazer, Nidhogg, going to be your 2 mainstays as Bahamut Tamer at tier 9. Just as a quick afterthought here, I'm not 100% sure this debuff actually applies from the 4 spells. I played Bahamut Tamer a lot on my first playthrough, and that 70% action rate kind of makes more sense, but you know, I'm not 100% sure on that. The action rates are more than high enough anyway. Okay, so finally at tier 10 we unlock the Beowulf class, the end of the pet build line. It's kind of really powerful and also not so powerful in its own way. We get insane buffs to our pet, but as an actual class, we're not very strong. So let's go over the class. Again, we're still immune to dragon damage. We can now actually wield any kind of gear, warrior, mage, and thief, so that's super nice for itemization options. Gonna make it much easier to build up that ward, especially from raiding Apollyon. I'd say the worst thing about being Beowulf at tier 10 is the lack of HP above all else. If we switch to other classes, you can see we've got almost 3,500 less health in Deity, over 2,500 less health in Realm Shifter, over 3,500 less health in Heretic, and over 4,000 less health in Gilgamesh. But the point is, those are all doubled in PvP, in the arena, remember. So at best, you're looking at up to 5,000 HP less as your base than Realm Shifter. So coming across other Beowulfs in the arena is a bit of a joke. That's why if you search the top global leaderboards, you're likely only going to see 1 or 2 Beowulfs. Regardless of its PvP prowess, Beowulf is still a super nice class. Every other class at tier 10 is going to want Beowulf for its poems and ballads type skills, and you can still complete all content in the game with Beowulf, and you're now also going to get a nice variety of pets to do different kind of content in different ways. So the variety is super nice. Let's look at the abilities, and we start with Valhalla Dissonance, which is our main tier 10 battle buff, and at full health this gives a 5% multiplier to pet power and a 10% increase of action rate, which is absolutely amazing. But as your health goes down below 50% in battle, the pet multiplier increases up to double as you go towards 0. So it's going to be much like redlining as a realm shifter, but for the cause of our pet power. Valhalla Protection gives you a flat 8% protection chance, which just blocks all damage. This applies per attack, so if you're going up against another Beowulf, you might block the Beowulf attack, but the pet might still hit you, if you understand what I mean. You might block both of them, but they're two separate instances of having to protect. The protect chance currently works additively with any protect chance granted from your pet. So for example, the Pumpkinhead pet has 10% block chance. That gets added to your 8% as Beowulf, giving you a total of 18% protection chance. We then have Hybrid Monster 2, which again is unfortunately very hard to build around and not something I recommend trying to build around. Your attack increases your magic and vice versa, just more so than as Bahamut. Honestly, I'm yet to meet another player in the game currently building around Hybrid. Going to be very important. Still using that lunge skill, by the way, lasts you so long into the game. Really goes well with the pet playstyle. Mana Siphon again, and we get critical hits again, which if you run out of mana, I guess is another way to regain your mana using that attack button. So skill wise as Beowulf, yes, we learned some hybrid damaging skills such as Verse, Beast Strikes. Verse is theoretically very nice as it does non-elemental magic damage, but it's powered by both your attack and magic stats. It's just in general quite a weak skill. Unfortunately, you're better off using something like Transference 3. Then you've got Beast Strikes, which is a multi-hit dragon damage skill with a chance to crit, again based off the power of both your attack and magic. Problem at tier 10 is that half the classes are actually resistant or immune to dragon damage, and to supplement our pet's damage we're more likely going to be using Swordplay 3, which actually gives temporary buffs to both us and our pet and debuffs to our enemy. We then start to learn skills which are very unique to the Beowulf class, that are these battle stance gate skills. Level 225 we learn Gate of Kara and Gate of Eir. These are fantastic skills thematically, playing off that Norse mythology which is rampant through this game, passing down stories and culture through poems and ballads. Your gate skills act like a separate battle buff alongside your things like double attack up, double magic up, defense up, resistance up. You can only be in one battle stance at a time, but you can switch between them, and like all other battle buffs they stack multiplicatively together. There's 2 defense gates and there's 2 offense gates, and they give you a buff equivalent to double up, but then they debuff you equivalent to triple down, which actually gives you a 90% decrease to certain stats. So let's look at how they work. Let's talk about Gate of Kara first. You can see it will further increase your physical defense at the expense of magical power and resistance. So this gives a 50% buff to defense while giving a 90% debuff to both your magic and resistance stats. So you're purely using this skill if you want to counter attack-based builds such as Swashbuckler. Let's talk about Gate of Eir. You get a 50% increase to your magical resistance, and you get a 90% decrease to your attack and your defense. So this gives you heavy resistance to magic damage, but leaves you wide open to attack damage, and it's going to gut your attack stat as well. The offensive gates are learned at level 230. Gate of Gunner increases our attack power by 50%, but decreases our magic and our resistance by 90%. You can basically consider it takes your resistance to 0. Likewise, Gate of Snotra increases our magic by 50%, decreases our attack and defense by 90%. The buff side is equivalent to double up, and the debuff side is equivalent to triple down. So if you're world firing with Crimson Gazer and you use Gate of Gunner, it's not going to do any damage whatsoever. You want to use Gate of Snotra with magic dealing pets. So you got to consider the upside and downside to each gate skill. They're really well balanced in my opinion. Give you a nice final boost in damage. You just got to really watch the downside. Finally, we learn the Verse 3 at level 240, and I really tried to make it work with hybrid builds in the past, and unfortunately it just doesn't work. It never works better than just a pure magic build or a pure attack build. And as Beowulf, you're mainly concentrating on hiding behind ward, buffing up your pet, and just trying to stay alive and survive. If we're actually dealing damage ourselves, there's always much better options. And the fact that we do want to hide behind ward and redline for a battle passive means that we want to have Divine Bastion or Divine Bastion 2 from Titan Guard This allows for 100% ward absorption. This is what allows us to safely get down below 1000 HP and really maximize our pet's damage output. Divine Bastion 2, really good for regenerating ward as well. I really like using Ward of Ortonite, which is the tier 10 ward skill bought from Arcanists. Really good for world farming. You can kind of roll around at less than 1000 HP. Turn 1, use Ward of Ortonite if you're going up against a Berserk boss or whatever. Mammon Acolytes as well. Any hard-hitting mob at tier 10. Ward of Ortonite will more than likely allow you to survive any hits, allow your pet to dish out some damage. While we're here, the last kind of main supplementary class we want to consider are going to be your faction gods and the tier 9 version, because we want to get the Aethric channel spell at level 225. Super nice for raiding. Once we've got all our buffs up, we're sitting at low health as Beowulf. We can use Aethric channel to use up turns and double our pet's damage output. So let's move on to tier 10 pets, and as we were just talking about raids, let's talk about Fjalar. Famed rarity pet, so it's fairly common. You'll get this within a few bestiaries, no problem. This is a solid Beowulf raiding pet, not because of speed, but you've got 2 fairly hard-hitting, multi-hitting attack skills, allowing us to use Gate of Gunner. We've got a nice high spell chance, but Fjalar was introduced purely for Beowulf because it allows you to redline and make the most of Valhalla Dissonance. Unlike the Chimera pet, there's no dot, and unlike something like Fenrir, there's no skill to actually regain our health, so we can sit nicely sub 1000 HP, really maximize that Valhalla Dissonance, so it gives you a very nice, easy to manage raiding experience. Jumping into Orna Pet Stats, I've got a fresh Beowulf tamer here, and the Fjalar pet, very nice high attack and a fairly high action rate. If we take out the buff, which is the speed skill, we've got a 53% action rate. So that's going to be fairly nice and simple. As you're using Gunner at later levels, you're also going to be able to use something like Swordplay to supplement your damage. So Fjalar, definitely a really solid raiding pet, especially going up against the Morrigan. The next pet we'll talk about is Anubis. Again, this is Master Forge quality, so it's going to be pretty rare to pick one up, but it's definitely worth getting. It's a purely magic based pet. You get super high magic, and you have a group of very high penetrating magic skills. So the M1 of these skills are really high. You've got the 4 basic elements, as well as Forbidden Art, which as a player is a multi-turn cast, but as a pet is an immediate 1-turn, really hard-hitting skill. The most annoying thing about Anubis is that it has Forbid, and it likes to spam it a lot. You can see the debuff chance is 30%. If you're wearing Freyr's charms, that's even higher. So if you're taking Anubis out for raiding or in PvP, the one thing you're going to want to do is actually have Forbid yourself and cast it yourself. So once you've buffed up, casting Forbid yourself is going to stop Anubis from spamming it. And Anubis is actually a very safe Morrigan raider, especially once you've picked up Snotra. Most of Morrigan's base skills are going to do magic damage. So if you're fairly new to tier 10, you don't have that much ward already, using Anubis and Snotra is going to allow you to go fairly deep into the Morrigan. What you can do is take the Gate of Kara skill as well to counter Morrigan's ultimate, the Great Plague. It's a 2-turn skill, so you can see her when she's about to cast it. Just switch into Gate of Kara, take the hit, switch back into Snotra. That will allow you to keep Anubis doing damage. So you can see these damage numbers are really high. Let's jump into Orna Pet Stats, and we've got Anubis over here. So you can see 86% action rate. Most of that's taken up from Forbid. Let's get rid of the debuff Forbid, and you can see still, because we've got 5 spells and each one has a 25% action rate, we've still got an 80.5% action rate chance overall, so that's super nice. As a core game pet as well, Anubis is probably going to be your #1 PvP pet. As I mentioned, all of these skills have really high penetration, so you're still going to be able to damage those high resistant enemies in PvP. Keep your eye out for event pets as well, because there's certain pets which are going to be better than Anubis in PvP, but in this guy we're just going to cover the core pets available all year round. The next pet I want to mention is the Chimera. It's actually a really solid pet for Beowulf. It's just going to give you a little bit more thinking to do in the way that you use it. Because of that Berserk 1 dot sitting on you, you can't just redline brainlessly with Valhalla Dissonance below 1000 health, or you're going to die. But because of that Berserk 1 buff, Chimera is going to be doing that extra 50% damage, and it already has really high attack. Omni Strike 3 is a really high penetrating skill. Blight Strike 3 is not too bad either. And then you've got Wyvern Strikes, which is a nice multi-hitting skill, going to be doing a lot of damage. The issue with Chimera is that the Morrigan raid is resistant to dragon damage, so all your damage is going to be halved coming out of Chimera. But it's still going to be fairly high. It's definitely still doable, and you can probably get high damage numbers compared to Fjalar. But Fjalar is still going to give you that smoother raiding against the Morrigan. I know I just talked about Anubis being a good PvP pet with a high penetration. Chimera is also good in PvP, and you have that added advantage of the Berserk buff as well, giving you an extra 50% increase to your attack. Still have high penetrating skills, and honestly Chimera might still be your best option going up against high ward enemies. as well as defensively stacked enemies with high defense or resistance. Your Gilgameshes, your deities. You're going to want to swap between Chimera and Anubis. Definitely test out on your kingdom members as well to see which one you prefer. Checking out Chimera on Orna Pet Stats, you can see you've got a much higher base attack than Anubis's magic. Okay, it's the same attack as Fjalar, but Fjalar only has the multi-hitting skills which has low attack penetration. If we remove Chimera's buff chance after it's cast Berserk, it's still going to have a 70% action rate, which is still pretty good. And we're going to talk about increasing our pet action rate later on with itemization anyway. So these three are going to be your new main pets at tier 10. However, don't discount the tier 9 pets, Crimson Gazer and Nidhogg, specifically for world farming and doing dungeons. They're still going to get the job done for you. I posted a clip on YouTube almost a year ago where I'm world farming with Beowulf Tamer with 1 HP and Crimson Gazer is just destroying everything. So if you like world farming, Crimson Gazer is definitely still a really good shout at tier 10. I'll give you a quick breakdown on what other pets are available at tier 10 and why you should or should not consider them. Firstly, we've got 2 event pets which are actually really good for Beowulf. That's Fey Chimera and the Mightiest Mimic. Mightiest Mimic, in my opinion, is probably your best PvP pet. It casts Ultima spell, which is absolutely ridiculous. And then you've got Fey Chimera, which is, I think, specifically made for Beowulf. It's like the Beowulf super version of the normal Chimera pet, purely because it has more multi-hitting skills rather than penetrating skills. Moving down, Cthulhu, I don't rate at all. Dark Pegasus, I guess Dark Pegasus you can use for doing boss dungeons. You're never going to run out of ward with it. It's super rare, you don't need it, and you can honestly just use Chimera or Nidhogg. Fafnir I've not messed around with, to be honest with you. Fenrir I have used. The only problem with Fenrir is that it uses Osmo Strike, so you can't really redline consistently with it, which means that you're regularly losing up to 50% of your total damage output. Mighty Mimic is not recommended. To be honest with you, it's not a replacement for the Mightiest Mimic I mentioned earlier. It likes to spam Mimic's Mischief and the spells aren't that amazing. Ortonite Golem I've honestly never tried. Using Ortonite Golem is going to take you a long time to kill anything. Similar thing with Pegasus, it's got too many skills that don't do damage. Mighty Slime is attack only. Interestingly, it also has 7% protect chance that was recently buffed to it, so you might be able to make this guy work. So as a base, 5000 attack. I don't think this guy is going to win you any defensive wars, but you're probably going to be able to break through a lot of defenses with it. I might need to make a video just with Mighty Slime. Moving on to itemization then, at tier 7 with the Dragon Knight, we can of course wear both warrior and mage gear. This will give you plenty of options to fit in pieces of gear. We're not limited to only one class type, and you should find it much easier to gear for. Starting off with a weapon, we have to mention the Crystallis at tier 7, dropping only from the Enlightened Prince boss in dungeons and gauntlets. We're going to use the Crystallis to buff up without any of our stats getting lowered. It prevents defense and resistance single down and double down, as well as attack and magic single down, which means we can use skills like Golem's Fortitude, Jin's Talent, Bear's Might without getting our main stats lowered. It also has fairly decent attack, a little bit of magic as well. This will allow us to easily buff up our pet to maximum power and be able to supplement it with skills like Swordplay. It's also at tier 7 that we can get the Reaper's Robes from the Anku boss. This is going to give us 5% extra orns from mob kills, and as pet classes we do have the extra cost of buying multiple pets at most new tiers, so I recommend trying to get a Reaper's Robe, sticking it on as soon as you can. If you get a legendary or ornate one, level it up to level 10. Regardless of quality, it will always give you 5% extra orns from mobs and bosses. That includes any mobs and bosses killed in dungeons. And then in PvP and raids, you can try and find a Yeti Overcoat. Great balanced stats, a bit of health, water resistance as well. And then for our boots and helm, we're basically looking to upgrade whatever is the best piece of equipment we can find. Be that anything from the mage tree, so High Fomorian Hood gives us high resistance. Ashen Boots from the Baylor Elite raid is going to be really nice. For warrior progression, we can also get pale leggings, so we've got 2 options there in the legs. If you can get great antlers from the arena, that gives us more balanced stats as well. It's going to be super nice. In our offhand, you can consider taking a mirror if you've got one leveled up already. It's going to be useful for world farming and going through dungeons nice and easily, lower your downtime for drinking mana potions. If you're looking for a bit more survivability in your offhand, there's a few shields you can get from the arena. They all give roughly the same amount of ward. You can see the Templar Shield, Tower Shield here, easily found in the arena. Tower Shield drops your stats, but it doesn't drop your pet stats. If you've got local mages specifically you want to counter, Arch-Rune Shield offers very high resistance and the same amount of ward. Another option is the Balance Left offhand, available on completing the NPC Balance quest. Actually has very nice ward for this tier, and once completing the quest there is a chance of finding a quality version at the end of dungeons. Finally, mentioning accessories, let's talk about this Anku's ring. It's very important actually. It gives you sleep and curse immunity. So this will allow you to use the Mimic's Mischief skill without getting cursed yourself. If you pair this with a Crystallis, you'll also not have any of your resistance or defense stats dropped either. So again, this is really nice for buffing. Going to be good in PvP as well. Also, you get dark resistance. Other few options you consider are Ancient Trolls Charms. They give you a little bit of stats, a little bit of HP and mana. Ring of Anduin is going to be a really important pickup, giving you status immunity to the 4 basic status afflictions coming from the 4 basic elements: Rot, Burn, Paralysis and Freeze. But there's fairly new items available to us that actually boost our pet stats and action rate even more. We can get the tier 5 Dragoon's Charm. You'll be able to find this from any kind of mimic drop. So that's mimics, great mimics, ancient mimics that you can find, mimic kings as well. You can also find them from certain quests if you keep your eye open. This will give you the same effect regardless of quality. One charm will increase pet power by 5% and action rate by 2%. So if you want to squeeze your Dark Dragon, get every inch of power available out of it, equipping 2 of these Dragoon's Charms can cause much needed destruction. Let's jump into Orna Pet Stats to give you an example of what Dragoon's Charms can do for you. So the chart isn't perfectly set up. We have to pretend we're using Fey Chimera Gear and Fey Dragon Gear. Fey Chimera Gear drops at tier 10. Fey Dragon Gear I'll talk about in a second. Basically each piece of Fey Dragon Gear improves action rate by 2%. Fey Chimera Gear improves pet power by 2%. So to simulate having 1 Dragoon's Charm, we do 2.5 and 1 in here. Let's copy Warhorse and Dark Dragon stats as they would be without having any Dragoon Charms on. Okay, so I've copied Warhorse and Dark Dragon stats down here without any Dragoon Charms equipped. In this section we're simulating Warhorse already casting the speed buff, or you already have Dex up. So let's put it on 1 Dragoon Charm here, so we can see offensive power goes up 5%, but it's an increase in action rate, which is really nice to see. We get a 6% increase for Warhorse to do something, 49.7 over 43.7. Simulating if we already have Dex up, then Warhorse is going to have an extra 5.5% chance to do something. Because Dark Dragon already has very high action rate, the increase in action rate isn't that much, but the 5% power is certainly very nice. Let's stick another Dragoon Charm on. And then if we're simulating Warhorse in a raid situation, we've got a whole 10% increase in action rate, which is almost a 30% increase. You go from 36% chance to 46.7% chance. Over the course of a long fight like a raid, you can think of that as literally 30% increase in damage output without even thinking about the increased attack power we get from the increased power. So in PvP, Dark Dragon is going to be an absolute monster with a couple of these charms equipped. So Dragoon's Charm are super nice. Remember, the quality doesn't affect the action rate or pet power, just where the shiniest one you can find. Play about with them, see what you like, try and find a sweet spot for your certain pet. On that note, we have to talk about the Fey Dragon World Raid Boss. You can find these in the wild on extremely rare situations, but the main way you're going to find this is summoning them with summoning scrolls found from the Baylor Gateway mobs in dungeons, and rarely from the end of dungeon rewards. So each piece of Fey Dragon Gear, as I mentioned earlier, increases pet action rate by 2%. We'll be able to wear either warrior or mage variants of the gear. The stats themselves are not too bad, to be honest. You do get the dragon resistance as well. We can really use these to boost the action rate of our pets even further. Let's simulate it, pretending we've got 2 Dragoon Charms equipped. Let's whip on 3 more pieces of Fey Dragon Gear, and it's pretty bonkers. Warhorse is going to be doing almost double the amount of actions as it was previously, and you can almost count on Dark Dragon doing something every single turn. So keep Fey Dragon Gear in mind. The stats aren't too bad, can definitely be useful for the next couple of tiers. If you want to try something funky and increase your pet damage, you want to see really high damage numbers coming out of your pet, really consistent damage, play about with it, play about with the Dragoon Charms as well. Also come and use this spreadsheet or in a pet stats, you can change the stuff in here. If you've got any issues using it, just let me know, I'll try and help you out as best I can. Link in the description to this sheet below, make a copy of it for yourself, and then let's move on to tier 8. With the Freyr class, we can start to be on the lookout for ward items. First on the list is the Gear dropping from the Heimdall boss. One-handed weapon, really nice stats. You get defensive stats as well, but the big one is ward. This will multiply with ward coming from your shield. So Heimdall you obviously want to kill for its amazing XP and Orn rewards, and hopefully pick up a really nice Gear. This will last us until we get a nice Abyssal Axe from Polygon in tier 9 or a Demeter's Halberd. So Gear will be our number 1 weapon of choice. We want to multiply our ward then with an offhand, so we're looking at Northern Shields. Arisen Bone Shield as well, dropping from Arisen Undead Golems, actually offer us very nice HP and defense alongside ward. Might be fairly difficult to find a good one of these, in which case sticking to a Northern Shield or even a Heimdall Shield as well will not be too bad. For our armor slots, looking at stat gear, basically you want to mix and match a lot of Northern gear alongside gear from the Fallen King Arthas raid. Northern Warrior and Mage gear should be very easy to find, giving us high defense going into the Polygon raid at the next tier. Of course, keep an eye out for a nice cockmail from the Great Cockatrice in dungeons as well. For world farming, we're sticking with the Reaper's Robe from Anku, and you also want to try and get yourself a nice Lost Helmet dropping from the Headless Mob. Only appears at night or any time of the day during Dungeons and Gauntlets. Again, increases our Orn gain from mob and boss kills by another 5%, allowing us to save up for that Crimson Gazer at tier 9. New accessories available to us are the Cursed Monster Tombs, dropping from the Fafnir boss. This will increase our experience gain, and I recommend for world farming and doing dungeons, if you can survive, you can stick this on. The lower stats don't affect our pet, which is one of the main advantages of running pet builds in the first place. Allows us to farm experience and Orns fairly easily. In PvP and raid situations, we're looking at the same kind of accessories we just mentioned at tier 7. Anku's ring is a big one, and if you've been having fun with the Dragoon's Charm, stick at least one of them on. Will bump up your damage from Triton rather nicely. Of course, Fey Dragon Gear still very viable at tier 8 as well. Let's jump into Orna Pet Stats here again. We've got Triton and Big Cactus down here without any Dragoon Charms or Fey Dragon Gear equipped. If we go with the same example before, if we use the example of using 2 Dragoon Charms, we can see Triton and Big Cactus have the same stats. We've bumped their attack well over 3k here, just on entry into tier 8, and the action rate increases just over 10% for each pet. However, it's going to feel more noticeable for Big Cactus. Going from 32% to 41.5% is a much bigger jump percentage wise than going from 57.8% to 69.5%. Do the math yourself, play about with this sheet, but if you take Big Cactus into the arena with some Fey Dragon Gear and Dragoon Charms, you might be booming a lot of people. Yeah, use Mimic's Mischief turn 1, see if you can take some names. Okay, at tier 9 we want to continue building on our ward gear. That's mainly going to come from raiding Apollyon non-stop for a few weeks, a few months on end, unfortunately. But ward gear really important for pet builds. And again, with Bahamut we can wear warrior and mage gear. So if you like, we've basically doubled our chances of getting good ornate ward gear from Apollyon simply by being able to wear both equipment of warrior and mage. Keep in mind the Fey Yeti coat from the World Raid boss. That's an awesome piece of gear. Gives you HP, which is really nice for Bahamut. And even Beowulf at tier 10, you have really low HP compared to other classes, especially in PvP. So we're really concentrating on Apollyon. Armor pieces. In our shield slot, we want to scour the world for a nice fallen shield from Mammon. This will give us curse immunity, allowing us to drop the Anku's ring. Gives us really high ward as well. A little bit of defensive stats. Hands down the best shield at this tier. For our world farming weapon, we actually have 2 options available to us regarding experience gain. You have the Arisen Witch's Staff, which is going to be very rare to get compared to the Venin, but you know, you might get lucky. RNG is RNG. The thing with pet builds is that yes, the pet is going to do damage. So in theory, what people used to actually do is take a broken Arisen Witch's Staff or even a broken Venin and upgrade that all the way to Master Forge and Demon Forge. Because if you start with a broken item or an ornate item, once they reach Master Forge and Demon Forge quality, the experience rate is the same. But of course, upgrading broken gear takes less materials. In fact, both broken and poor gear were kind of reworked to cost the same amount as a normal piece of gear material wise to upgrade it. So if you're a fan of world farming and killing a lot of mobs relative to your level, by that I mean you're not just raiding to level up, then I kind of recommend waiting for an ornate Arisen Witch's Staff or an ornate Venin. Level that up instead, because that will allow you to use it with other classes later on. For world farming, we're still sticking with the Reaper's Robe and the Lost Helmet for increased Orn gain, and now we can pair that with Band of Gods as well, increasing our Orn gain by 50%. Super nice item. Finish that main story quest line as soon as you can on reaching tier 9. Get a Band of Gods, get a second Band of Gods, and have from End of Dungeons as well. These give 50% experience as well, remember, so I would definitely go with these over Cursed Monster Tombs. If you only have one, go with one of each, and that should be you sorted for world farming and dungeons. For PvP and raiding, we want to try and get a nice Abyssal Axe. This is going to be our main endgame item. It might take you a while to get a good ornate one, but this is what we need to build that ward wall and hide behind it using Divine Bastion. Demeter's Halberd gives you nice attack. One situation I could think of where you might use this is for a raid specific item. You can put Assassin's Jewels or Heretic Jewels in here depending on which pet you're using, and use skills like Swordplay to shred Apollyon's defense and resistance. It would be useful to have Arcanix unlocked for your relevant faction affinity if you're not the Earthen Legion. But yeah, tier 9 essentially, ward is the name of the game. Both warrior and mage gear available to us should allow us to get a full set of ornates, hopefully, by the time we get into tier 10. And the first thing you want to do upon reaching tier 10 is hunt down the Boar NPC and finish his quest to get an Old Northern Crown. Whatever you do, do not dismantle the one you get from the quest reward. It's a really good item even at common quality. Level it up to tier 10, get it Master Forge, get it Demon Forge eventually. We get 9 adornment slots allowing us to bump up our ward, but it also has an innate Ring of Night, That stops our attack and magic getting lowered. That's really important for our pet as well. So Old Northern Crown, #1 choice for Beowulf. For your chest and leg slot, we can actually stay with Apollyon gear. It's absolutely fine. We are in fact more than likely going to have more ward going with Apollyon gear. If you're farming Morrigan, only the warrior pieces actually have any ward on them. You can see the common one starts with 1% ward, 1% ward on the legs. But checking the mage tree here, only the Fey chest has ward. The boots and the helm don't have any ward at all. So Apollyon gear, very relevant at tier 10 with Beowulf. We're still going to be hiding behind that ward. And we do get an upgraded shield. That is the Arisen shield coming from Arisen Mammon, only available in dungeons. Whilst in tier 10 you get a chance for Arisen Mammon to appear on the final floor of dungeons. So start pumping those gauntlets. And it's a nice upgrade to our Fallen Shield. It's obviously very rare, so if you've got a good ornate Fallen Shield from Mammon at tier 9, again, very viable even at tier 10. Weapon wise, we're really going to stick with the Abyssal Axe for most facets of the game. The ward is just super necessary for Beowulf. In the world, again, stick with your Venom, stick with your Arisen Witch's Staff for the XP gains. And then speaking of experience gains, we're going to look for a nice Arisen Monster Tomb from Arisen Fafnir mobs. I'd say the best way to farm then is just doing normal gauntlets in dungeons. Gives an incredible boost to experience gain. Pair it up with the Band of Gods depending on whether you need more Orns or you want to gain experience at a faster rate. Now let's mention Freyja's charms. This dropped from the Fallen Freyja mob. Again, probably best found in normal gauntlets. This tier 10 item increases our pet power by 10% and action rate by 4%. Basically double the power of a Dragoon's Charm. And these might be very interesting to pump your pet stats through the roof. Go and play about with it in Orna Pet Stats. We also have Fey Chimera gear. This drops from the Fey Chimera World Raid Boss. It actually only drops warrior armor, and each of these pieces increases our pet power by 2%. Which isn't huge, and you know you're not going to be using these in most scenarios. It's just if you want to push your pet power to the limit. As you can see, there's no ward on here. Again, something to play about with and push your pet stats to the max. So in summary then, at tier 10 with Beowulf, we're looking for ward gear in the form of Old Northern Crown. If you can find a high quality one of these from End of Dungeons, you've done really well for yourself, pretty much for any class, to be honest, at tier 10, not just Beowulf. Apollyon gear as well, still hugely relevant for Beowulf at tier 10. We're really hiding behind that ward wall. Nice Arisen shield. Keep pushing for a nice Abyssal Axe. It really gives us the highest amount of ward possible, and Arisen shield as well. As always folks, if there's anything unclear or if you've got any questions, please feel free to drop a comment below. I'll do my best to answer everything as soon as I can. I hope you've enjoyed this pet class progression guide. Drop a like and subscribe for more future Orna content coming soon. I'm Shabash. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Ciao.